whomever you love, we welcome you.
Good morning. Welcome and thank you for joining us at our virtual broadcast here at First Unitarian Church of Toledo. We miss seeing you all in person in our sanctuary, but we're glad everyone is keeping safe, healthy, and seeing us online. Happy New Year. Couple announcements. Actually, we just want to take a moment and thank our tech crew. We have Robin on camera today. Hello, Robin. Yay. We also want to make sure, and you can shout out in the comments to all of these people that make our services go. We have Arun and Eric, and Tom is training on camera today. So thank you guys every week. They make all of this happen. If you'd like to be more involved in your church community remotely or a little bit occasionally in person like this, so we have our virtual singing, we have reading opportunities available. You can check in with us via email or type in the comments and we'll reach out to you. With that, I think that's our only announcement.
Well, I guess I should announce that I'm dealing with a couple of technical issues today as well. I see my computer is not wanting to be part of the new year yet, I guess. Perhaps that's its excuse. Anyway, I'm making a couple of adjustments, but we will have this service today. Our opening words are by Sylvia L. Howe. We bid you welcome on this first Sunday of the new year. Like Janus, we gather with part of us looking backward and part of us looking forward. We gather on the edge of the new year, saddened by our losses, cherishing our joys, aware of our failures, mindful of days gone by. We gather on the cusp of this new year, eager to begin anew, hopeful for what lies ahead, promising to make changes, anticipating tomorrows and tomorrows and tomorrows. We invite you to join our celebration of life, knowing that life includes good and bad, endings and beginnings. We bid you welcome.
Our chalice lighting for the new year are the words by Lisa Doja, and this is what she says. For the new year, just days old, beginning today, always beginning, we light our chalice. Symbol of faith, perseverance, and hope in astonished thanksgiving and irrepressible praise. For beginnings that emerge out of endings, appear amidst continuity, become visible in hindsight, we light our chalice. Symbol of faith, perseverance, and hope in astonished thanksgiving and irrepressible praise for all the times and all the ways we have begun anew together. We light our chalice, symbol of faith, perseverance, and hope in astonished thanksgiving and irrepressible praise.
And now please join me in reciting our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now our opening song, our congregational singing, is number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And we will have words on the screen.
Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection
Now, Soroya will give us story time.
Hello and good morning. Um, the story for today is called Animal School. It's by Devorah Greenstein, and it's been adopted. The story was loosely adapted from a story that George Revis wrote when he was the assistant superintendent of the Cincinnati Public Schools in the 1940s. And you can find the original Revis version online. Many years ago, the animals in the great forest decided that they wanted to start a school for all their children. Until that time, it had been the responsibility of parents to teach their children the skills they needed to know. But the animals in the great forest wanted their children to learn from professional teachers. So they organized a school and hired staff. They adopted an activity curriculum consisting of swimming, running, flying, and climbing. All the animals took all the subjects because it was very important to them that no child be left behind. To ensure that students were progressing satisfactorily, standardized achievement tests were administered to all students. Here's what happened. The ducks were excellent in swimming. In fact, the ducks were better than their teacher. But some of the ducks made only passing grades in flying, and all of them were very poor in running. Since they were slow in running, they had to stay after school for remedial running practice, and they had to drop swimming in order to practice running during their swimming class time. This was kept up until all the ducks' web feet were very sore, and the ducks were so tired that soon they were only average in swimming. But average was acceptable in school, so nobody worried about that except the ducks. In running, the rabbits started at the top of the class, but they did very poorly in swimming. Also, the rabbits insisted in hopping around, and the teachers were concerned about their hyperactivity. So they made the rabbits walk everywhere instead of allowing them to run or hop. And the rabbits had to come in early every day for special swimming class. And many of the younger rabbits developed severe fur problems because they were having to spend so much time in the swimming pool. The eagles were definitely problem children. In climbing class, the eagles beat all the others to the top of the tree, but they insisted on using their own way to get there and were quite stubborn about it. The eagles said that clearly it was the goal that mattered and that it was quite right for eagles to get to the treetop by flying. The school psychologist diagnosed them as having oppositional defiant disorder. That's a real diagnosis that some children are given in school. A strict behavior modification plan was developed for the eagles. We can end this story in two ways. Sad to say, in some schools, we still make squirrel children try to learn to fly by flapping their paws and punish eagles for being defiant about their right to be themselves. But happy to say, in some schools, we all enjoy all children for themselves. Each squirrel is a perfectly wonderful squirrel. Each rabbit is a lovely rabbit, whether or not they choose to hop or skip or roll or walk. Each eagle is allowed to be an eagle. And we encourage each duck to swim and swim and swim and not worry about learning to run. And the moral of the story is when we try to make everybody the same, nobody is happy. People can get hurt, and their best gifts can go to waste.
Our anthem today is Depend on You by Amanda Udis Kessler with some adapted text. It reminds me a bit of one of my favorite prayers of St. Teresa, so I want to give you those short words to meditate on. Let nothing disturb you, let nothing frighten you. All things are passing, God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices. Light gives way to darkness, dark returns to light. Seasons come and seasons go, they mark our days and lives. Everything is changing, still we need not fear. In the midst of all the change, we know that you are always here. Ever steadfast, holy love, dignity remains the same. Though our lives are full of change, we can count on you. Rock and shelter, shield and sun, as we hold our hope as one, as we share the work be done, you will bring us through. Faithful oneness of our souls will be faithful too. Forever we'll depend on you. Spring gives way to summer, summer soon is gone. People that we know and love are bound to move along. Everything is changing, do not be afraid. In the midst of all the change, recall the promise that we make. Ever steadfast, holy love, dignity remains the same. Though our lives are full of change, we can count on you. Rock and shelter, shield and sun, as we hold our hope as one, as we share the work be done, you will bring us through. Faithful oneness of our souls will be faithful too. Forever we'll depend on you. Hope gives way to worry, still our trust is strong. As we've come to know your care, our lives have been transformed. Everything is changing, growing like a seed, building up a world of love in which we have all that we need. Ever steadfast, holy love, dignity remains the same. Though our lives are full of change, we can count on you. Rock and shelter, shield and sun, as we hold our hope as one, as we share the work be done, you will bring us through. Faithful oneness of our souls will be faithful too. Forever we'll depend on you. Forever we'll depend on you.
Now, please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. and let the tunes and the word of that anthem sit with us at this time as well. It's 2021. People have New Year's resolutions and revolution. People have new starts, next stages, life turns. For many of us, it's also, if you want to say more of the same, it's that there are some of us concerned with confinement, whether imposed or voluntary, looking for change, liberation, some of that possibly coming when it's our time to have the vaccines administered for the pandemic. And this week and next week especially, we're thinking of change of government administrations. It's 17 days until inauguration, with some major resistance to the people's will as expressed in the elections. And we have to go through that, emerge on the better side, and rebuild the nation, both from times of government that seemed not to be in our best interest to the pandemic. And the pandemic really is in our thoughts. It includes those in our own congregation who are infected and receiving care. But we also have people in our congregation who have started the vaccination process. So we hope for health. Our reading today for this meditation, contemplation, prayer time is It Matters by Robert R. Walsh. I knew a man who had printed on his stationery this proverb: nothing is settled, everything matters. It established a certain ambience for reading his letters, as if to say, what you are about to read is to be taken seriously, but is not final. I remember him and his proverb sometimes, especially when it seems impossible to change the world or myself in any significant way. Times like the beginnings of New Year's. Sorry, Jim, I say, it's not true that nothing is settled. In the past year, choices have been made, losses have been suffered, there has been growth and decay, there have been commitments and betrayals. None of that can be undone. A year ago, no one knew whether during this year one person would become pregnant, another would get cancer, another would take a new job, another would have an accident, but now it is settled. One day this year, I was present just when someone needed me. Another day, I was busy doing something else when I was needed. One day, I said something to a friend that injured our relationship. Another day, I said something that enabled a person to see life in a new way. The best and the worst of those days is now written. All my tears of joy or sorrow cannot erase it. If I stay with my meditation long enough, the reply comes, Robbie, says Jim, you have misunderstood the proverb. It is true that you cannot escape the consequences of your actions or the chances of the world. But what is not settled is how the story turns out. What is not settled is what the meaning of your life will be. The meaning of a life is not contained within one act or one day or 1 year. As long as you are alive, the story of your life is still being told, and the meaning is still open. As long as there is life in the world, the story of the world is still being told. What is done, but nothing is settled. And if nothing is settled, then everything matters. Every choice, every act in the new year matters. Every word, every deed is making the meaning of your life and telling the story of the world. Everything matters in the year coming, and more importantly, everything matters today. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Spirit of life, come to me. Sing in my heart all the strength of compassion. Rise in the sea, moving the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Rose, holy rose, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So be it.
Our reading today is by Erica A. Hewitt, adapted. It's called A Stream of Living History. Our congregation is a stream of living history. Our strength, our current vitality and joy comes in part from its roots. Those who gave life to the congregation even before its founding, and including our 19th and 20th century predecessors, the Liberal Society, the Unitarian Society of Toledo, which was also called the Unity Society, the First Independent Society of Toledo, the Unity Church Association, the Church of Our Father, and the First Unitarian Society, all in the ancestry of what was incorporated in 1908 as the First Unitarian Church of Toledo, Ohio, and what we also know as the Toledo Unitarians. As we balance between our past and our future, the roots that gave this congregation life and the story we have yet to write, may we know ourselves not only as a people of joy and gratitude, but as a people of memory and a people of honor.
On January 1st, 1870, 151 years and 2 days ago, the first issue of a weekly magazine, The Index, was published, promoting what it called free religion, a theological concept that has much in common with the humanist movement that developed soon after. The index originated in Toledo and had as its editor Francis Ellingwood Abbott, recently arrived as the minister of an ancestor congregation to our First Unitarian Church of Toledo, Ohio. His congregation was the first independent society of Toledo, and there are stories about that name and other congregation names, as well as stories of Abbott and other ministers, which we'll be exploring today and in a new podcast and video blog we Toledo Unitarians are preparing to launch, called in tribute to our history, The Index. I'm the editor of our new index, with this being our Sunday service closest to the first index New Year's Day 1870 anniversary. I bring today some index publication and editor history, adding to the introduction I put on our Toledo Unitarians YouTube channel January 1st. Much as I'd like to have launched a complete index issue on the 151st anniversary, the ways of this world mean we'll have to take our time, and not just because of the pandemic. I don't have the support or the stamina to make an 8-page or more newspaper-sized publication every week, in addition to leading this congregation. Our index is going to start with occasional publication as it develops, so don't expect a weekly yet, but do watch for it. And I hope you'll look for the index and stay with us for that, as well as for our Sunday services and what else we might put on our Toledo Unitarians YouTube channel. There will be ties in this Index 151 to the original index. We'll be looking in Frank Abbott's index, especially its early years in Toledo before it and he moved to Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we'll also seek out supporting materials for the stories of Abbott and the index. Today's story is just the beginning, giving some framework. In this new index, we'll also have content about the more than 150 years of Unitarianism, Universalism, humanism, free thought, and liberal religion in Toledo and Northwest Ohio. I appreciate and acknowledge the local history collection of the Toledo Lucas County Public Library, which has those issues of the index in its collection, along with files of First Unitarian Toledo's history. Besides our Index 151 tied to the original through looking at history related to the Toledo Unitarians and including items relevant to religious liberalism, our new index will cover other topics, sometimes with no obvious tie to free religion, except the concept that religion can explore anything and everything. The index will include my own writing from sermons sometimes as preached and other times adapted for this forum, thanks to Eric Sills, Sandra Kozak Sills, and Stone Soup Recording Studios for help there. And there will be essays I'll write just for the index. This index gives me the opportunity to share interests outside of church, what appeals to me at the time. In a way, the index will merge the different tracks of my background as a minister and preacher, a journalist and columnist, and a librarian and researcher with interests ranging from popular culture to philosophy. Not that those are mutually exclusive. And there's even an old index to now real-life tie to pop culture and philosophy. I hope we'll have original material from others too, for the index will be based at First Unitarian Church of Toledo, and I hope will be a place where its members can contribute. Let me tell you a little bit about Frank Abbott and Toledo. Abbott came into the picture for the Unitarian Society of Toledo, informally called the Unity Society, when Toledo's minister Stephen Camp accepted the call to the Third Unitarian Congregation in Brooklyn, New York. Albert E. Macomber was head of the Toledo Church's search committee. Here's what Macomber wrote in his 1925 biography of the congregation. Mr. Abbott was, by mental qualities and thorough training, unquestionably the best equipped man who had recently entered the Unitarian ministry. A Harvard graduate in its art and divinity schools, and attested by his teachers as a man of rare attainments. Several articles upon philosophic topics by Mr. Abbott, published in the North American Review, had been widely read in Toledo, and some had been republished as leaflets for more general local information. Philosopher Gardner Williams, a former member and board member of our congregation, wrote about Abbott in the humanist publication Unity in 1952. Here's part of that article. Abbott was a pantheist, not a humanist, but he was a wonder for his period in American culture. He wanted a church without any creed, in which ministers and members would be invited to believe what they thought was really true, and to say what they believed upon appropriate occasions. Moreover, the church might help supply the appropriate occasions. In the church as he conceived it, humanists would have been welcome. The Unitarian Church today is as he wished it, liberal and creedless, and his labors contributed largely to making it so. Abbott was 32 years old when Albert Macomber contacted him about the Toledo pulpit. After graduating first in his class at Harvard, then starting seminary at Harvard Divinity School, and completing his theology degree at Meadville Theological School, then in Pennsylvania, Abbott had accepted the call to be minister at the Unitarian Church in Dover, New Hampshire, and was ordained there in 1864. W. Creighton Pedon's Dictionary of Unitarian Universalist Biography entry on Abbott from 2009 says that Abbott started preaching on free thinking during his first year in Dover. He associated free thinking with the thought, Pedon stated, that liberal Christians employing complete intellectual freedom should not be required to base their religion on the authority of Christ. In addition to the theological aspect of free thinking, Pedon says that Abbott was the first American philosopher to endorse Darwin's theory of evolution. Abbott had an intellectual goal of emphasizing the scientific method, of finding a way for religion and philosophy to adapt to science. That transition to free religion, as Abbott came to call it, coincided with some institutional rigidity in Unitarianism. What came to be called the Battle of Syracuse in 1865 was a controversy in which the National Conference of Unitarian Churches established a creed, saying that Unitarians were disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, and that Jesus of Nazareth was King, Lord, and Christ. This was to be offered as amendments to the Constitution of the American Unitarian Association. Abbott objected, and over the next couple of years, with some other people, he founded the Free Religious Association. In Dover, New Hampshire, he resigned from the pulpit, formed an independent society instead at what had been the Unitarian Church, and some members of the Unitarian congregation found the fine print in their endowment and sued for his not following the intent of the church's funding. The state Supreme Court found in the Unitarians' favor, so he couldn't use the Unitarians' resources, including the building, anymore. Then Toledo came calling. This is from Abbott's May 12th, 1869 reply to Macomber's first letter asking if Abbott would be interested in being Toledo's minister. Your invitation makes me hope I have been mistaken in this. If your people are willing to make half as great sacrifices for religious liberty as I have been called to make, there is no life I would prefer to that of a free public advocate of American religion. This winter, I have been supporting myself by private tuition of suspended college students. But if I can be a minister, not of Jesus, but of humanity, I am ready for the work. You seem so well acquainted with the general character of my course hitherto that I need enter on no explanation of it. Let me come straight to the point and deal with you as I hope to be dealt with by you. If your society is resolved at all events to retain the names Unitarian and Christian, and to listen to no reasons that would lead them out upon the broad ground of absolute independency, I must say somewhat sadly but very firmly, I am not the man you seek. But if you are willing to have the question raised and not afraid to hear why I regard the shaking off of all sectarian names and connections is a profound practical consequence, then I shall be glad to spend the months of July and August with you and submit to your judgment the terms on which I can honorably continue to preach. I have no desire to dictate to anyone. I have only a determination to square my own course with principles that bend for no one. At the end of the 2 months, if you still choose to be Unitarians, we may at least part good friends. Or if you are willing then to take a more advanced position, we may yet work together for years in the cause of free religion. Unless you feel willing to have me raise this question, I ought to say beforehand that California has not enough gold to tempt me to connect myself as its minister with any Christian society. It would be neither right nor decent for me to do so. But if you are as radical and free as your letter leaves me to hope, I think we may agree together that the only manly position is aloof from all denominations. All I wish is an opportunity to state my ground and the reasons for it. If your society is not free enough to be willing to hear me on this subject, let our communication end right here. Let me add that I believe that the society which first takes distinctly and intrepidly the ground of free religion will be a tremendous power throughout America. It takes pluck and nerve to adopt it, but every man of such a society will be proud to have been a member in it if he lives 25 years. I have taken the only ground that is absolutely free and wait till the world moves forward to it. A single man though I am, with but 2 or 3 friends at my side, the power of ideas makes me today stronger than the whole Unitarian denomination. Do not suppose that for an instant I could think of any compromise, any concession to expediency. I could better afford to go to the almshouse than to budge an inch from my position. Do you really want such a man to occupy your pulpit? If you do, I rejoice that so much courage has been born in my native land. And whether I am fit to do your work or not, such a man you will surely find. Back to Peden's entry on Abbott in the Dictionary of Unitarian Universalist Biography. In 1869, Abbott became the minister of the Unitarian Society of Toledo, Ohio. He made it a condition of his employment that the society withdraw from the national conference and change its name from Unitarian to Independent. As his sermons were really philosophical essays and his pastoral style was negligent, the congregation dwindled in size and in 1872 stopped paying his salary. This settlement confirmed his unsuitability as a parish minister. While in Toledo in 1870, he founded The Index, a weekly magazine with a free while in Toledo in 1870, he founded The Index, a weekly magazine with a radical religious and social philosophy. From its inception, The Index functioned as the voice of the Free Religious Association. Albert Macomber was very much involved. Besides bringing Abbott to Toledo, Macomber was one of the founders of The Index. This is from Macomber's 1925 church history. In 1869, the publication of a religious journal devoted to free religion was under consideration. Mr. Abbott volunteered his services as editor. David R. Locke of the Toledo Blade and Albert E. Macomber, remember, this is Macomber writing about his own involvement, guaranteed the printing and circulation for 2 years. The first number was issued under the name The Index, January 1, 1870. The paper received warm approval from liberal thinkers the country over. It took high rank with the best existing journals. The paper was published in Toledo until 1873, when the Independent Society having disbanded, Mr. Abbott removed to Cambridge, Mass., and the paper was thereafter published in Boston. Mr. Abbott continued as editor until 1880. Soon thereafter, the paper was purchased by Edward C. Hegler, a wealthy Illinois miner, and the publication office removed to Chicago. Later, the name was changed to the Open Court, and the policy of the paper was changed to conform to certain views held by Mr. Hegler and his son-in-law, Dr. Karras, on monism. You can say that monism is a philosophical and theological concept that all is one. Dr. Karras became the new editor. Today, the Open Court exists as part of Cricket Media, primarily a publisher of educational children's magazines, but Cricket has Open Court publishing for adult, academic, and mass market books, including the Popular Culture and Philosophy series. There's that old Index tie to current times I mentioned earlier. Let's get back to Abbott with the description from our former minister, Wendy Jerome, in a 1998 sermon. Now we get to the sobering part of our history. The Reverend Francis E. Abbott, a brilliant man and powerful speaker, was called to the pulpit in 1869. Attendance swelled. Now, the versions are not quite clear. Apparently, Francis Abbott was not afraid to give theological names of his beliefs. These were the beliefs that he shared with his congregation and with a growing group of interested religious liberals in the city. However, the names of his beliefs frightened listeners off. So perhaps did the new name of the congregation, the Independent Society of Toledo. A more conservative group splintered off from the Independent Society, calling themselves the Unity Church Association. The Unity Church group called as minister a Shakespearean scholar, the Reverend Charles Cravens. No matter that later on, when asked to define his religious beliefs, Charles Cravens's views easily echoed those of Francis Abbott. Gossip or shallow resentment prevailed. The two liberal groups did not rejoin. The Independent Society, despite its new church at the corner of Adams and 10th, faded out. The Unity Church faded out as well. A church history manuscript by Ethel E. Brown described both Abbott's downfall and the effect on Unitarianism in Toledo. She wrote, ultimately, the church board of directors was forced to the conclusion that Reverend Abbott was too scholarly, too learned, and philosophical to make himself understood by most of those he tried so earnestly to reach, thus making his resignation imperative and inevitable. With Reverend Abbott's departure from the city, Unitarian church activities came to a standstill. But dreaming of greater things to come, Toledo's faithful met when and where they could, thus keeping alive their common interest in the liberal cause. No longer was there an independent society. No longer was there a unity church society to sustain and fortify them. For 12 long pastorless years, Toledo liberals hungered to have their way of life enriched from a pulpit of their own. But not until 1887 did a rift in the dark clouds of their spiritual isolation appear, a ray of joyous hope in the person of Reverend Allen Gary Jennings, sent by the American Unitarian Association to awaken new interest and to effect, if possible, reorganization of Toledo liberals. As for the Christianization of Unitarianism, in the end, Abbott's view prevailed. Returning to Macomber's church history from 1925, the amendments to the Constitution of the American Unitarian Association, adopted at Syracuse in 1865, have been withdrawn. The special occasion for maintaining the Free Religious Association no longer obtains. That platform is now practically the platform of the American Unitarian Association, maintained by an able and scholarly ministry. And as a place in our church for humanism, the theological and philosophical position with which I most identify, here is what Gardner Williams, from our church and the author of the 1951 book, Humanistic Ethics, put forth. Whether or not the average liberal minister will preach humanism successfully in the 21st century will depend upon the intellectual temper of the congregations. Ministers can do some things to educate their congregation, but many other factors enter in. One is economic prosperity. Another is the teaching and interpretation of science in the secular schools, both elementary and advanced. If humanists want humanistic churches, we shall have to tend to these other things as well. All of the aspects of human culture interact and are mutually interdependent. So, my companion Toledo Unitarians and our friends, let's have that intellectual temper, keep the church economically viable, and look to science. Journey with us in our tellings, our writing and video of the Index and Liberal Religion. Issue 1 will premiere soon. Blessings and Happy New Year 2021. So be it.
And as we come to a time of offering, I'd like to give you these words by Kristen Collins. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. If you'd like to learn more about getting involved at First Unitarian, please visit the link in the chat, uutoledo.org. You can learn more about our mission, our vision for the future here in Toledo, and to be a part of our community. If you'd like to be involved in a paper sense, we are at 3205 Glendale Avenue. You can contact us either on the chat or through our church office. Thanks.
Now, the coming soon part. our previews. Next week's 10 a.m. Spiritual Adventures Forum on Zoom is going to be Impact of Climate Change in Images, and it will be led by Pat Church. Then our service at 11 a.m. here on the YouTube channel will be Pandemic Parameters, which I will lead.
Please remember to join us if you're able for our social hour on Zoom immediately after service. We'll put that meeting and passcode in the FYI is already there, but we'll also link it in the YouTube. We hope to see you. If it's your first time, please join us. Visitors are always warmly welcomed.
And now our closing words. This is In This New Year by Aaron Stockwell. In this new year, let us be amazed. Let us search for new life and hope in our midst. Let us nurture creativity in every form. Let us be reminded that new insights of the universe are always being made. In this new year, let us be amazed.
And as we extinguish our chalice today, Lois Van Leer gives these words. Let go. Let go of all that binds you, of all that burdens you, of what you carry, of all that shames you, of fear, of trespasses and transgressions, of woundedness. Let go of guilt. Let go of anger. Let go of small-mindedness and pettiness, of ways of being that no longer work for you, of compulsions that consume your living. Let go of what you cannot change. Let go of regret, of that which haunts you. Let go of pain. Let go of ways in which you miss the mark. Let go.